A crowded gate at O'Hare International. A black woman, Dr. Lillian Thornton, is rushing to catch a flight that will decide the fate of her entire company. A stressed gate agent, Brenda Jensen, sees a problem. An airport cop, Officer Frank Miller, sees a target. He grabs Lillian's arm, slamming her against the jet bridge wall, enjoying the power. What he doesn't know is that he's just assaulted the General Counsel for Transatlantic Air. He thought he was exerting authority. He was actually ending his career. And she has the entire encounter on video. The sterile, recycled air of Chicago O'Hare International Airport always smelled like weak coffee and anxiety. Dr. Lillian Thornton despised it. She navigated the bustling concourse of Terminal 5, her roller bag gliding silently behind her, a stark contrast to the chaotic symphony of announcements, crying children, and wheeled luggage clattering over grout lines. Lillian was a woman who lived by a schedule, a necessity for someone whose mind was a steel trap of case law, corporate bylaws, and contractual loopholes. At 42, she was the youngest general counsel in Transatlantic Air's TAA history, a fact she had to prove daily in boardrooms filled with grey-haired men who still called her young lady. Today the stakes were higher than ever. She wasn't just flying. She was the airline's nuclear option, being flown to London to handle the final, brutal stages of the Henderson versus TAA arbitration. Henderson wasn't a person. It was Henderson Global, a vulture fund attempting a hostile takeover by arguing TAA had breached merger covenants. If Lillian failed, if she couldn't expertly dismantle their claims, Transatlantic Air, an 80-year-old legacy airline, would be carved up and sold for parts by Christmas. Tens of thousands of jobs, from pilots to baggage handlers, rested on her ability to argue a very specific, very dry point of law. She checked her watch. 4:15 p.m. Boarding for TAA 808 to London. Heathrow began in 10 minutes at gate K19. She'd be cutting it close. She'd spent the last 3 hours in an emergency video conference with the TAA board, assuring a jittery CEO, Philip Gregory, that she had the situation under control. "Philip," she'd said, her voice calm and measured, "their entire case rests on the force majeure clause. They're arguing the 2024 fuel crisis was a predictable event. It's ludicrous. I will make their lead counsel look like a first-year associate." Gregory had sighed, the video feed crackling. "Just get to London, Lillian. Get there and win." Now she was just another face in a sea of travellers. She wore dark, tailored trousers, a silk shell, and a simple blazer. Her battle armour was packed in her carry-on. She wore no jewellery save for a simple watch and the modest diamond studs she'd bought herself when she passed the bar. Her hair was pulled back in a severe, professional bun. She looked like a woman who had no time for nonsense, which was precisely true. She arrived at K19. It was a zoo. The flight was overbooked, and the restless energy of passengers who knew they were about to be crammed into a metal tube for 8 hours was palpable. Families were trying to rearrange seats, business travelers were loudly complaining on their phones, and a long, disorganized line had already formed near the boarding lanes. At the center of this storm was the gate agent. She was a woman in her late 50s, with a tight perm and a TAA name badge that read Brenda. Brenda Jensen looked like she was one lost piece of luggage away from a full-blown meltdown. She was snapping at passengers, her voice a nasal whine that cut through the din. "Sir, the bag must fit in the sizer. I don't care if you flew with it last week." "Ma'am, I cannot change your seat. The flight is full. You'll have to talk to the purser on board." Lillian sighed and found a quiet spot against a pillar to review her opening statement one last time on her tablet. She was Zone 2 to board. She was used to waiting. She pulled up the file, the words, Confidential, Henderson arbitration, glowing at the top. She tuned out the noise, her focus absolute. We will now begin boarding TAA 808 to London Heathrow, Brenda announced, her voice strained. We will be boarding by zones. We ask for your patience. Please have your boarding pass and passport ready. Lillian watched as First Class and Zone 1 were called. The line moved sluggishly. Then, we now invite Zone 2 to board. Lillian packed away her tablet, zipped her bag, and joined the end of the Zone 2 line. She pulled up her digital boarding pass on her phone. She felt a brief pang of exhaustion. It would be a long flight, followed by a long day. But the thought of the legal fight ahead sharpened her senses. She was ready. She advanced steadily. The passenger in front of her, a nervous-looking student, was fumbling with his documents. Brenda snatched them, scanned them, and shoved them back. Go! Then it was Lillian's turn. She stepped forward, holding her phone screen up to the scanner, her passport in her other hand. Beep, boop, boop. The scanner flashed red, a harsh, negative sound. Brenda's eyes, already narrowed, flicked from the screen to Lillian. There's a problem with your ticket. I'm sorry, Lillian said, keeping her voice even. It should be fine. It was booked by corporate. Well, corporate didn't pay for it, apparently, Brenda said, loud enough for the people behind Lillian to hear. She typed furiously into her terminal. This ticket is flagged. It says, payment incomplete. You'll have to step aside. The words hung in the air. Payment incomplete. Lillian felt a hot flush of anger, but she kept it caged. That's impossible. Can you please run it again? My name is Lillian Thornton. I don't care if your name is Santa Claus, Brenda snapped, her patience completely gone. The system says you didn't pay. I have a full flight to board. Step aside, now. She gestured sharply to the SIDA, Security Identification Display area, door, a small, sad area of carpet next to her podium. Brenda, Lillian said, her voice dropping to the low, clear tone she used in depositions. I am not moving from this line until you tell me the specific issue. That ticket is valid. I am the general counsel for this airline, and I am on critical company business. That was a mistake. Brenda's face contorted in disbelief, then sarcastic amusement. Oh, are you? The general counsel. Sure, sweetheart. And I'm the Queen of England. You're trying to scam a free flight. I've seen it all before. She looked past Lillian, projecting her voice. I need security at gate K19. I have a passenger refusing to pay, claiming to work for the airline. A collective groan went up from the line. People stared, some with pity, most with annoyance. Lillian's blood ran cold. This wasn't just an inconvenience. It was a public accusation. It was defamation. Ma'am, Lillian said, her voice hardening to ice, you are making a catastrophic error. I am warning you. You're warning me, Brenda laughed. You're not getting on this plane. From the edge of the concourse, 2 airport police officers, who had been lazily watching the crowd, began to saunter over. One was young, Officer Diaz, looking bored. The other was older, thicker, with a ruddy face and a clear air of self-importance. His badge read, Officer F. Miller. What's the problem here, Brenda? Officer Miller asked, his thumbs hooked in his duty belt. He looked at Lillian, his eyes lingering for a moment, and his expression soured. This woman, Brenda said, pointing a crimson-nailed finger at Lillian, is trying to board with a fraudulent ticket. Now she's refusing to leave the line and causing a disturbance. She's getting aggressive. Aggressive? Lillian said, her voice rising in disbelief. I have done nothing of the sort. I am simply trying to board my flight. Officer Miller stepped directly into her personal space. He He was a good 6 inches taller, and he used every inch of it to loom. "Ma'am, you heard the gate agent. You need to clear the area. You're holding up the flight." "Officer, this is a civil misunderstanding," Lillian said, trying to pivot from the gate agent to the officer. "This is an employee of Transatlantic Air who is making a mistake. My identity can be verified in 30 seconds. "I don't care about your identity," Miller said, his voice flat. "I care about you, disturbing the peace." He put an ugly emphasis on the words. "Now, I'm going to ask you one more time. Step aside. And I am telling you, I am a confirmed, ticketed passenger. I have a right to board. You have no probable cause to detain me." Lillian saw the flash in his eyes before he moved. It was the lawyer talk. He hated it. He hated being challenged. He saw her, a black woman in a blazer, and saw only uppity. "Probable cause?" he sneered. "I'll give you probable cause. You're creating a public disturbance. You're interfering with airport operations, and you're failing to comply with a lawful order." He unclipped his radio. "Dispatch, I've got a 1016, female non-compliant at K19. Might be a 1090. A disruptive passenger, a potential arrest." "Frank, hold on," Officer Diaz said, his hand lightly on Miller's arm. "Let's just get her information. Let's de-escalate." Miller shook him off. "I am de-escalating, kid. Stand back." He turned back to Lillian. His face was inches from hers. "Last chance. Move, or I move you." Lillian stood her ground. "You will not touch me. I am Dr. Lillian Thornton, and I demand to speak to the TAAA station manager and your superior." "Dr. Thornton," Miller mocked, his lip curling. "Well, doctor, you're about to discover what happens when you don't listen." He reached for her. Time seemed to slow down. Lillian saw the hand coming, thick, scarred, weighted with a chunky silver ring. She instinctively recoiled, but Miller was fast. He grabbed her left arm, his fingers digging into her bicep, crushing the silk of her shell against her skin. "That's it!" he growled, yanking her out of the line. The force was shocking. Lillian stumbled, her roller bag tipping over. "Let go of me! You are assaulting me!" she yelled, her voice no longer calm, but sharp with outrage and a spike of real fear. The crowd gasped. Several phones immediately went up, their small red record lights winking on. A young man in a baseball cap, Ben Carter, was right at the front, his phone steady. "Frank, don't," Officer Diaz said, moving forward. But Miller was in a red haze, being told no, being challenged, especially by her. It was more than his ego could take. "She's resisting," he shouted, a preemptive defense. He grabbed her other arm and spun her, shoving her hard against the solid wall of the jet bridge entrance. The impact was brutal. Lillian's head snapped back, saved from a direct hit by her bun, but her shoulder and cheekbone scraped against the textured drywall. "Stop resisting," Miller barked, pressing his forearm against her back, pinning her. "I am not resisting," Lillian cried out, her voice muffled. She was trapped, humiliated. Her mind, usually her sharpest weapon, was screaming. The pain in her arm was intense, and her face stung. "You're assaulting a passenger," Ben Carter, the young man filming, shouted. "She didn't do anything." "Get back, or you're next, kid," Miller roared over his shoulder, not looking away from Lillian. He fumbled at his belt for his zip cuffs. Brenda Jensen, the gate agent, was standing at her podium, her hand over her mouth. This was not what she intended. Or maybe it was. Her face was ashen. She hadn't wanted this scene. She just wanted the problem to go away. "Officer, please," Lillian gasped, trying to stay calm, trying to find the legal levers in a situation that had gone primal. "You're making a mistake. You are going to lose your job." Yeah, Miller grunted, trying to wrench her arm behind her back. You'll be telling that to the judge, right after I book you for assault on a police officer." "What assault?" Lillian managed. "You are the only one being violent." The commotion was now impossible to ignore. The boarding line had dissolved. The entire gate area was a circle of spectators, filming the ugly tableau. "What in God's name is happening at my gate?" The voice was pure command. It cut through the chaos like a foghorn. Officer Miller paused, his hand still on Lillian. He looked up, annoyed at the new interruption. Standing at the opening of the jet bridge was Captain Robert Hughes, the pilot for TAA 808. He was tall, silver-haired, and his face was a mask of controlled fury. Flanking him was Susan, the senior flight purser. "Officer, what is this?" Captain Hughes demanded, his eyes taking in the scene. The woman pinned to the wall, the other officer looking helpless, the crowd filming, and the gate agent frozen in horror. Miller, still pressing Lillian against the wall, puffed up. "Captain, this is police business. A disorderly passenger. I'm handling it. Just a no-fly situation. We'll have her cleared out in a minute." "A no-fly situation?" Captain Hughes repeated, stepping fully into the terminal. He looked at Lillian. At that moment, Lillian's bag, which Miller had kicked aside, spilled open. Her laptop slid out, followed by a thick, bound sheaf of documents. The cover page in bold red letters was unmistakable. Transatlantic Airways, Office of the General Counsel in Ray, Henderson Global Arbitration. Opening statement. Confidential and privileged. Susan, the purser, saw it first. Her eyes went wide. She knew what General Counsel meant. Captain Hughes's gaze followed hers. He saw the documents. He looked at the woman's face, now marked with a red abrasion from the wall. And he looked at her eyes, furious, intelligent, and terrifyingly clear. "Oh my God," Susan whispered, her hand flying to her chest. "Officer," Captain Hughes said, his voice dropping several degrees, becoming lethally calm. "Take your hands off that woman. Now." Miller was confused. The captain had no authority over him. "Sir, I am conducting a lawful—" "That woman," Captain Hughes interrupted, "is Dr. Lillian Thornton. She is the general counsel of this airline. And unless you want Transatlantic Air to personally own your house, your car, and your pension fund, I suggest you unhand her." The silence that fell was absolute. It was heavier and more complete than any sound. Every phone was still recording. Officer Miller's arm, which had been pressing Lillian to the wall with such force, went limp. He stepped back, a dazed, uncomprehending look on his face. "She's—" "What?" Brenda Jensen looked like she was going to faint. Lillian slowly, deliberately, pushed herself off the wall. She stood up straight, her blazer twisted, a strand of hair falling from her bun, her cheek bright red. She didn't cry. She didn't shout. She simply turned, her eyes boring into Officer Miller. "I believe," she said, her voice shaking only slightly from adrenaline, "I asked for your name and badge number." Miller, who 30 seconds ago had been the apex predator of the terminal, was now just a man in a cheap uniform, stammering. It's Miller, Frank Miller. Badge 714. Lillian nodded once, her gaze sharp. Then she turned to the gate agent. "Brenda Jensen, employee ID 4492. It wasn't a question. Lillian had already clocked it from her badge. "You," Lillian said, "accused me of fraud. You told this officer I was aggressive. You, a TAA employee, slandered me in a public terminal." Brenda opened her mouth, but only a small squeak came out. Lillian then looked at the young man, Ben Carter, who was still filming. "Keep recording," she said calmly. She then turned to Captain Hughes. "Captain, thank you for your intervention." "Dr. Thornton," Hughes said, stepping forward, his face etched with concern and profound embarrassment. "Are you all right? Let us get you on board. Susan, take Dr. Thornton to 1A. Get her some ice." "1A," Lillian said. "My seat is 24B. I'm flying economy, like many of our employees." This was a new, painful twist for Hughes. Their general counsel, flying to save the company, was in a middle seat, and his gate agent had just had her assaulted. "Dr. Thornton." "Lillian," Hughes said, his voice pained. "Please allow us. It's the least we can do." "What you can do, Captain," Lillian said, her voice hard, "is hold this flight. I have to make a call." She pulled out her own phone. The screen was cracked from the fall. But it worked. She ignored the dozen new notifications and dialed a number from memory. She put it on speakerphone. The entire gate area, silent as a tomb, heard the clicks as the call connected. Then the ringing. Ring. Ring. Philip Gregory's office. "This is Dr. Lillian Thornton," Lillian said, her voice projecting. "Get him. It is an emergency." There was a frantic pause. "One moment, Dr. Thornton." A few seconds later, the voice of the CEO of Transatlantic Air filled the terminal. "Lillian, what's wrong? Did the flight get cancelled? You're supposed to be in the air." Lillian Thornton took a deep breath. She looked at Officer Miller, who was now sweating profusely. She looked at Brenda Jensen, who was openly weeping. She looked at the circle of passengers, their phones all pointed at her. "Philip," Lillian said, her voice echoing in the terminal. "I'm still at O'Hare. I'm going to be late to the arbitration. The flight is fine, but I was just physically assaulted and illegally detained by our own gate staff and the airport police." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. For a full 5 seconds, the only sound was the faint static of the speakerphone. When Philip Gregory, the CEO, finally spoke, his voice was unrecognizable. It was a low, dangerous growl. "Lillian." "Who?" "TAA gate agent Brenda Jensen, employee 4492, at gate K19, and airport police officer Frank Miller, badge 714. Lillian recited the names as if she were reading an indictment. "Officer Miller, acting on Ms. Jensen's false report that I was a fraudulent and aggressive passenger, slammed me against a wall and attempted to cuff me. I... Brenda Jensen collapsed onto her stool, a sobbing, incoherent wreck. Officer Miller took an involuntary step backward, as if the voice on the phone was a physical force. His partner, Diaz, was already on his radio, his back to the scene, no doubt calling for a supervisor. "Lillian, are you injured?" Gregory's voice was sharp. "I'm bruised. I'm angry. But I am not incapacitated," Lillian said. "But my phone is damaged, and my laptop was thrown to the ground. My primary concern is the arbitration. My secondary concern is the multi-million-dollar lawsuit we now have against the Chicago Police Department, and potentially our own employee." She was, even now, thinking like a lawyer. "Forget the lawsuit. Forget the arbitration," Gregory roared, and the entire gate heard it. "Are you safe? Captain Hughes!" Captain Hughes, who had been standing stiffly, snapped to attention. "Yes, Mr. Gregory. Is Dr. Thornton with you?" "Yes, sir. I am right here. I witnessed the tail end of the assault. My purser and I intervened. Get her on that plane. Get her in 1A. Get her whatever she needs. Ice, a drink, a new plane. I don't care." "Susan," Gregory said, clearly knowing the senior staff. "Look after her." "Yes, Mr. Gregory," Susan, the purser, said, stepping forward and gently touching Lillian's uninjured arm. "Dr. Thornton, please, let's get you on board." Lillian looked at the scene. Miller was now being quietly spoken to by a man in a suit, the TAA station manager, who had apparently sprinted from the other end of the terminal. Brenda was being led away by another TAA employee, her face buried in her hands. "Philip," Lillian said, taking the phone off speaker. The flight. The people. The flight can wait. The people can wait, Gregory said, his voice for her ears only. You are my only priority right now. No, Philip, that's where you're wrong, Lillian said, her voice firm. The company is the priority. The arbitration is the priority. Getting to London is the priority. I am fine. But when I land, I want this handled. Handled? Gregory gave a dry, mirthless laugh. Lillian, by the time your plane is over the Atlantic, I will have set fire to Officer Miller's career and Miss Jensen's entire professional life. I will have the head of the Chicago Airport Authority on the phone, personally apologizing. This will not stand. Now get on the plane. Win this for us. I will, Lillian said, and hung up. She turned to Ben Carter, the young man who had been filming. Sir, thank you for your video. It is now evidence. No problem, ma'am, Ben said, looking awestruck. That was insane. Are you okay? I will be, Lillian said. She pulled a business card from her wallet. My name is Lillian Thornton. This is my office email. Please, email that file to me and to my paralegal, Jessica. Do not post it on social media. Not yet. It is crucial evidence. Can I count on you? Yes, Markham, absolutely, Ben said, taking the card like it was a relic. Thank you. Lillian turned, picked up her tipped-over bag. Susan was already gathering her spilled papers and walked past Captain Hughes. Dr. Thornton, he began. Captain, she said, not unkindly. Just fly the plane. Get me to London. She stepped onto the jet bridge, her back straight, and disappeared from the terminal's view. Inside the aircraft, the first-class cabin was buzzing. They had all heard the commotion, the shouting, the CEO's voice. As Lillian entered, led by Susan, a hush fell. This is your seat, Dr. Thornton, Susan said, guiding her to 1A, the bulkhead window seat. Please sit. Let me get you a glass of water, or something stronger. Water is fine, Susan. Thank you, Lillian said, sinking into the plush seat. As the last of the passengers boarded, all of them giving her wide, curious glances, Lillian finally allowed herself to close her eyes. The adrenaline was fading, and the pain was starting to set in. Her arm throbbed where Miller had gripped it. Her shoulder ached from the impact with the wall. Her face stung. But worse than the physical pain was the humiliation, the hot, sticky shame of being manhandled, of being dismissed, of being profiled at her own company. She, Dr. Lillian Thornton, who could eviscerate a hostile witness with 2 questions, had been reduced to a disorderly female by a bully with a badge and a stressed-out gate agent. Susan returned with a glass of water and a makeshift ice pack, which Lillian gratefully pressed to her cheek. Dr. Thornton, Susan said, kneeling by the seat so no one could overhear, I am so sorry. What you went through, what Brenda did, it's inexcusable. It's not your fault, Susan, Lillian said, opening her eyes. You and the captain, you helped. Thank you. Captain Hughes is... Susan paused. He's livid. He's on the phone with flight operations. They've replaced the gate agent, but I've never seen him this angry. He said that in 30 years of flying, this is the worst thing he's ever seen on the job. The cabin door closed with a pneumatic thump. Captain Hughes's voice came over the intercom, but it had lost its jovial, welcome aboard tone. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Hughes. Apologies for our delay. We had a serious security incident at the gate, which has now been resolved by our team. We will be pushing back in a moment. Flight attendants, prepare for departure. As the plane taxied to the runway, Lillian ignored the offers of champagne, the hot towels, the premium menus. She pulled out her laptop, which, miraculously, seemed undamaged. She connected to the plane's high-speed Wi-Fi, the charge for which was comped by TAA's executive-level account. She had work to do. She opened her email. Ben Carter's file was already there. It was a 4-minute, 22-second video, crystal clear. She watched it once. Her stomach turned. The sound of her voice, the crack of Miller's, the smack as she hit the wall. It was worse than she remembered. She saved the file. She attached it to a new email. 2. Philip Gregory. Jessica, paralegal. Subject. Urgent. Evidence re O'Hare incident. TAA 808 body. Philip, attached is the video evidence from the incident at Gate K19. It was provided by a witness. As you can see, this was an unprovoked assault, escalated by Officer Frank Miller, based on false, defamatory statements made by TAA employee Brenda Jensen. Jessica, please complete the following immediately. 1. Preservation of evidence. Send a notice to the Chicago Airport Authority, Chicago Police Department, and O'Hare Security. I want all CCTV footage from all angles of Gate K19 from 4:15 p.m. to 5:00 p.m. Central. 2. Bodycam footage. Demand all bodycam footage from Officer Frank Miller, Badge 714, and his partner, Officer Diaz, for the same period. 3. Employee file. Pull the complete employment file for Brenda Jensen, ID 4492. I want her entire history, performance reviews, and any prior passenger complaints. I have a feeling this is not her first incident. Philip, I am fine. I will be landing at Heathrow at 06:50. I will win this arbitration. And when I return, we will handle this. This cannot ever happen to another TAA passenger, let alone a TAA employee. See you in London. Lillian, she hit send. As the Boeing 787 lifted off, climbing powerfully into the dark Illinois sky, Lillian watched the lights of Chicago recede. She felt a cold, hard knot of resolve tighten in her chest. They had messed with the wrong woman. While Lillian Thornton was 35,000 feet over the Atlantic, a war was breaking out on the ground. Philip Gregory, CEO of Transatlantic Air, was not a nice man. He was a brilliant man and a demanding one, but he was also fiercely, terrifyingly loyal to his people. He had personally headhunted Lillian from a white shoe law firm, seeing in her a mind as sharp and uncompromising as his own. She wasn't just his lawyer, she was his chief strategist. Hearing her, humiliated, in that terminal, it had activated a primal, protective rage in him. Before Lillian's plane had even cleared the runway, Gregory had made 3 calls. The first call was to Howard Pence, the TAA Director of Operations for O'Hare. "Howard," Gregory barked, not even waiting for a hello. "I am on my way to the airport. I have just been informed that our General Counsel, Dr. Lillian Thornton, was physically assaulted at Gate K19 by airport police, instigated by our gate agent, Brenda Jensen. I want them both detained. I want them in a conference room. I want them to not speak to anyone until I, or a TAA lawyer, gets there. Do you understand me?" Howard, a man used to dealing with blizzards and baggage system failures, was speechless. "Assaulted? Mr. Gregory, Brenda, do not make me repeat myself, Howard. Find them. Now. And you," Gregory added, "had better have a very good explanation for why your staff is accusing my general counsel of fraud in the middle of a terminal." He hung up. The second call was to the mayor of Chicago's personal cell phone. "Mayor Johnson, this is Philip Gregory. I am pulling Transatlantic's expansion plans for Terminal 6. Yes, right now." "Why?" "Because one of your airport police officers, Frank Miller, Badge 714, just assaulted my general counsel on a crowded concourse because our gate agent told him to. I have video. Oh, you will be hearing from our legal team and the Wall Street Journal, unless you, personally, have Officer Miller's badge on your desk in the next hour. I am not bluffing. The third call was to the head of TAA's Internal Investigation Unit. Get your team. Get to O'Hare. I want every TAA employee who saw, heard, or was in the vicinity of Gate K19 interviewed before their shift ends. Pull the manifests. Find the passengers. I want a complete, airtight case built before sunrise. Back at O'Hare, chaos reigned. Howard Pence, the station director, had found a blubbering Brenda Jensen in the break room. "Brenda, what did you do?" he demanded, his face purple. The ticket flashed red. It said, "Payment incomplete," she sobbed. "I see it all the time. People try to scam us. And she was so cold. And she said she was the general counsel. Who says that?" "She says that, Brenda," Howard said, his voice a low, terrified whisper. "Because she is the general counsel. She is Dr. Lillian Thornton. She is Philip Gregory's right hand. She is flying to London to save this entire goddamn airline, and you just called the cops on her." Brenda's crying stopped, replaced by a look of sheer, unadulterated horror. She finally understood. "I need your badge," Howard said. "You're suspended, pending investigation." "Suspended? But my flight." "You don't have a flight, Brenda. You're done. Security will escort you out. Now give me the badge." Meanwhile, Officer Frank Miller was in an even worse position. His supervisor, Sergeant Peterson, had arrived, along with 2 senior TAA security executives. They were in a small, windowless office in the airport's police substation. "Frank, what the hell did you do?" Peterson said, rubbing his temples. "I did my job, Sarge," Miller blustered, but the sweat was visible. The gate agent called for assistance, a non-compliant passenger refusing to clear the line, causing a disturbance. She got in my face, started spouting rights and lawyer talk. I used a standard compliance hold. She resisted. She resisted. The senior TAA exec, a man named Kyle, said, "That's not what the half-dozen videos I've already seen show. They show you grabbing a 130-pound woman and slamming her into a drywall. They show her calmly telling you who she is. She could have been anyone," Miller protested. "How was I to know?" "You're supposed to de-escalate, Frank," Sergeant Peterson yelled, his patience snapping. "Not play tough guy. You know who that woman is? She's the general counsel of Transatlantic. That's TAA. They're our biggest partner. They pay for half the damn airport. You just assaulted their top lawyer." It was Brenda," Miller said, desperately trying to shift blame. "The TAA agent. She said the ticket was fraudulent. She said she was aggressive." "And you, a trained police officer, just took her word for it?" Kyle scoffed. "You didn't run her ID? You didn't ask a single follow-up question? You just put your hands on her?" Miller's phone buzzed. It was his union rep. He ignored it. "Sarge," Miller pleaded, This is just a misunderstanding." Sergeant Peterson sighed, looking old and tired. "Frank, hand me your badge and your service weapon." "What? Sarge, no! It's a he said, she said." "No, Frank," Peterson said, his voice cold. "It's a she said, and she has video, and she's the lawyer who owns the building. You're on administrative leave, effective immediately. The mayor's office already called. They want your head. I can't protect you from this one." Miller's face, usually so ruddy with anger, went chalk white. He unclipped his badge. The TAA execs watched, their faces impassive. While Miller's world was ending, Lillian's paralegal Jessica was working with the speed of a hummingbird. By the time Lillian's plane was over Newfoundland, Jessica had 1. filed the preservation notices with CEC to Philip Gregory and the mayor's office. 2. Pulled Brenda Jensen's file. The smoking gun was right there. 14 passenger complaints in the last 3 years, all for rude, aggressive, or discriminatory behavior. 4 of them were from passengers of color who claimed Brenda had, unfairly, singled them out for baggage checks or security questions. TAA management had done nothing but give her a verbal warning. 3. She had cross-referenced the flight manifest with TAA's loyalty program and found Ben Carter's email. She sent him a thank you email with a voucher for $1,000 in TAA flight credit and a personal note from the legal department asking him to sign an affidavit. Jessica then investigated the payment incomplete flag. This was the most damning part. The ticket had been flagged. Why? Because it was a last-minute, full-fare, one-way international ticket, booked on the CEO's corporate card. The TAA fraud detection system, an automated bot, had flagged it as suspicious for potential high-level fraud. The protocol was for the gate agent to see the flag, call a TAA internal verification number, and have the charge confirmed. It was a 60-second process. Brenda Jensen hadn't made the call. She had seen the flag, seen Lillian's face, and jumped to her own conclusion. She hadn't followed protocol. She had followed her prejudice. Jessica typed up a summary, attached Brenda's file and the payment system log, and sent it all to Philip Gregory. In his penthouse office in downtown Chicago, Philip Gregory read the file. He looked at the 14 complaints against Brenda. He looked at the simple, 2-step protocol she had ignored. He picked up his phone and called Howard Pence at O'Hare one more time. "Howard, I just read the file. Ms. Jensen, she's not suspended. She's fired. Effective 3 hours ago. Have security walk her out of the building. And I want an email sent to every single TAA employee worldwide before morning. Subject line, 'We are better than this.' In it, I want you to detail, without names, how a failure to follow protocol and a lack of basic human decency will not be tolerated at transatlantic air. Is that clear?" "Yes, Mr. Gregory. Crystal." Gregory hung up. He looked out at the lights of the city. He'd put out the first fire. Now, he just had to pray Lillian could put out the one in London. Lillian landed at Heathrow at 6:45 a.m., local time. She had not slept. The 8-hour flight was a blur of case notes, Diet Cokes, and a throbbing, dull ache in her shoulder. The ice pack Susan had given her had long since melted. She bypassed the normal customs line. As she stepped off the plane, a TAA representative, the London station manager, a crisp man named David, was waiting for her at the jet bridge. "Dr. Thornton, I'm David. Mr. Gregory sent me. Are you all right? We have a car and a medical team on standby." "No medical team, David," Lillian said, her voice hoarse. "Just get me to the hotel. I need to shower and change. The arbitration starts at 10 a.m. "Of course, Doctor, this way." He escorted her through diplomatic channels, and within 15 minutes, she was in the back of a black Mercedes S-Class, speeding through the early morning London traffic. Her phone buzzed. It was the summary email from Jessica. She read about Brenda's 14 prior complaints. She read about the payment incomplete flag and the protocol Brenda had ignored. A cold, hard fury settled over her. This wasn't a mistake. It was a pattern. She arrived at the hotel. Philip Gregory was waiting in the lobby, pacing. He looked like he hadn't slept either. "Lillian," he said, rushing over. He stopped short of hugging her, seeing the stiff way she held her shoulder. "How are you?" "I'm ready," she said. "No, how are you?" he insisted. Lillian looked at her boss, the man who ran a $20 billion company. "I'm angry, Philip. I'm humiliated. And I am tired. But I am not broken. I'm going to go upstairs. I'm going to put on my battle armor, and I'm going to go to that arbitration, and I am going to destroy Henderson Global." Gregory nodded, a small, proud smile on his face. "I know you will. Brenda Jensen has been terminated." "Good," Lillian said. "Officer Miller has been suspended, and the mayor's office has issued a formal apology to TAA. It's not enough. We'll be filing a civil suit on your behalf by Monday." "Also good," Lillian said. "Now, if you'll excuse me. I have work to do." An hour later, a different Lillian Thornton walked out of the hotel elevator. The rumpled traveler was gone. In her place was a formidable figure in a dark, impeccably tailored suit, low heels that clicked with authority, and her hair pulled back so tightly it looked like a weapon. The bruise on her cheek was visible, but she had made no attempt to cover it with makeup. It was a badge of war. She walked into the arbitration room, a wood-paneled office in a private legal complex. The team from Henderson Global was already there, schmoozing, laughing, all expensive suits and cologne. Their lead counsel, a notorious lawyer named Peter Shaw, smiled when he saw her. "Dr. Thornton, a pleasure. We were afraid you wouldn't make it. We heard there was trouble with your flight." The leak had already started. Lillian stopped in front of him. "Mr. Shaw, the only trouble is the one you're about to have. Shall we begin?" She sat. For the next 6 hours, she was a machine. She was not the woman who had been slammed against a wall. She was the lawyer who had written the very contracts Henderson was trying to break. She dismantled their force majeure argument with surgical precision. She quoted case law they had overlooked. She used her cross-examination of their key witness, a smug finance bro, to make him admit, under oath, that the takeover had been their plan long before the fuel crisis. But her masterstroke came at the end. "Mr. Shaw," she said to the arbitrators, "has argued that Transatlantic Air is a company in disarray, that we are mismanaged. He presents a picture of a corporation that cannot handle its own affairs." She then stood up and walked to the center of the room. "Yesterday," she said, her voice quiet, "I was the victim of a procedural failure. An employee who has since been terminated violated protocol, and an overzealous police officer who has since been suspended assaulted me. It was unpleasant." The Henderson team looked confused. Where was she going with this? "Mr. Shaw would have you believe this is evidence of TAA's weakness. But I am here to tell you," Lillian said, her voice rising, "that it is our greatest strength. Because what happened after?" "Within 1 hour," she said, holding up a finger, "the employee was identified and fired. Within 2 hours, the police officer was suspended, and his department had apologized. Within 3 hours, our CEO had a new company-wide training protocol on my desk for review." She looked at the arbitrators. "Transatlantic Air does not hide its problems. We do not ignore them. We find them, we root them out, and we fix them immediately and decisively. That is not mismanagement. That is excellence. That is the company you are dealing with." She walked back to her seat. "Henderson Global's case, it's like my experience yesterday. It's built on a false premise, a bad assumption, and it has no merit." She sat down. The silence in the room was absolute. Peter Shaw was pale. He had been completely outmaneuvered. She had taken her personal trauma and turned it into the closing argument that would save her company. The arbitration panel called for a recess. An hour later, they returned. Henderson Global's case was dismissed. All claims. TAA was free. Lillian had won. The victory in London was total. But for Lillian, the battle was only half over. The win felt hollow overshadowed by the red mark still visible on her cheek. When she and Philip Gregory flew back to Chicago, this time in the airline's private Gulfstream, she wasn't celebrating. She was preparing for war. The full weight of karma, she knew, was not a single event. It was a cascade. It was a series of consequences that rippled outward, touching everything the initial act had damaged. Karma for Brenda Jensen. Brenda's termination was the first rock to fall. She had been fired for cause, citing her violation of the TAA payment protocol and her history of passenger complaints. This meant she was ineligible for severance, and her COBRA health insurance benefits were astronomical. She did what she thought she was supposed to do. She sued Transatlantic Air for wrongful termination, age discrimination, and creating a hostile work environment. This was the moment Lillian had been waiting for. TAA's legal team, under Lillian's direct supervision, filed a countersuit. Not against Brenda, but against the union that had protected her. TAA's position was that the union, by repeatedly shielding Brenda from the 14 prior complaints, was complicit in her behavior and had failed in its duty to all its members by allowing a rogue employee to damage the brand. But the real karma was Lillian's counterclaim against Brenda personally. She filed a civil suit for defamation and slander. The case never even made it to discovery. Lillian's team presented Brenda's lawyers with the video from Ben Carter, the logs of the payment incomplete flag, and the sworn affidavits of the 14 other passengers who had filed complaints. Brenda's lawyers dropped her case instantly. To avoid the public humiliation and financial ruin of Lillian's slander suit, Brenda signed a full confession. She admitted in a legally binding document that she had not followed protocol, that she had made a false accusation based on her own personal judgment, and that she had slandered Dr. Thornton. She was blacklisted, not just from TAA, but from every major airline. Her name was on an internal do not hire list that all major carriers shared. Her life's work, the power she wielded at Gate K-19, was gone. The last anyone heard, Brenda Jensen was working as a part-time cashier at a discount hardware store in the suburbs, a world away from the international travel and perceived prestige she had loved. She was just another face, in a different, much smaller, uniform. Karma for Officer Frank Miller. Frank Miller thought the union would save him. He had been in jams before. He'd roughed up suspects, and the union always made it go away. But this was different. He hadn't roughed up a suspect in a dark alley. He had assaulted a high-powered corporate lawyer in a brightly lit terminal in front of 50 cell phone cameras and the CEO of the company that held the lease for the entire terminal. The mayor's office, under immense pressure from Gregory, hung Miller out to dry. The internal investigation was swift. The video from Ben Carter was undeniable. Officer Diaz, Miller's partner, testified against him, stating that Miller had ignored his attempts to de-escalate and had used unnecessary and punitive force. Miller was fired from the Chicago Police Department for gross misconduct, conduct unbecoming, and assault. Losing his job was only the beginning. He also lost his pension, which was just 2 years from vesting. And then Lillian filed the civil suit. Thornton v. Miller. She wasn't suing the city. She wasn't suing the department. She was suing Frank Miller, personally, for battery, emotional distress, and false imprisonment. She was piercing the veil of his qualified immunity. Miller was ruined. He had to hire a private lawyer, draining his savings. The suit was a lock for Lillian, and he knew it. Facing a judgment that would bankrupt him for life, he offered a settlement. Lillian's terms were not about money. She demanded 2 things. 1. Miller had to surrender his Peace Officer Standards and Training certification, meaning he could never be a cop in any state ever again. not even a mall security guard. 2. He had to issue a formal, written apology to be read aloud in a public access court hearing, admitting he had acted on personal bias and had illegally assaulted her. Miller, his face beet red, his voice a broken mumble, read the apology in court. Lillian sat in the front row, her expression unreadable. Frank Miller's power was gone. He sold his house to pay his legal fees and was last seen working as a long-haul trucker, a solitary, anonymous job where the only person he could bully was himself. Karma for transatlantic air. Lillian knew that the truest justice had to include her own company. TAA was not innocent. Its systems had failed. Its management had ignored Brenda's pattern of behavior. This, she knew, was the Henderson case all over again. A weakness to be turned into a strength. She went to Philip Gregory with a proposal. "We're going to get sued over this," she said. "Not by me, but by the next person. The 14 complaints against Brenda. That's a time bomb." "So what do we do?" Gregory asked. "We get ahead of it," Lillian said. "We don't just fix it, we lead." 2 months later, TAA announced the Thornton Initiative. It was a complete, top-to-bottom overhaul of TAA's customer service and security protocols. Part 1, mandatory, annual de-escalation and implicit bias training for every employee, from the CEO down to the gate agents and baggage handlers. Failure to pass meant termination. Part 2, a new streamlined passenger advocacy system. If a passenger filed a complaint against an employee, it was immediately flagged for a human manager's review, not just filed away. 3 similar complaints against one employee triggered an automatic suspension and retraining. Part 3, a new protocol over prejudice rule. Any employee, like Brenda, found to have ignored a verification protocol, like the phone call, in favor of a personal judgment that resulted in a passenger's mistreatment, would be immediately fired. No warnings. It was revolutionary. Other airlines mocked it, until TAA's customer satisfaction scores, which had taken a hit after the incident. Lillian had, after all, allowed Ben Carter to post his video after the legal case was settled, began to skyrocket. TAA became known as the airline that fixed its problems. The Thornton Initiative became the gold standard, and Lillian was asked to speak about it at industry conferences. She had turned her humiliation into a corporate mandate. And as for Ben Carter, the young man who filmed it all, he received a personal, handwritten thank you from Lillian. Tucked inside was a TAA Unlimited card, granting him free first-class travel, anywhere TAA flew, for life. 1 year later, O'Hare International, Terminal 5, Gate K9 Dr. Lillian Thornton, now Executive Vice President and General Counsel of Transatlantic Air, walked toward the gate. She was flying to London, this time to finalize the acquisition of a smaller European airline, a deal made possible by TAA's new, robust public image and healthy stock price. She was, as always, running on a tight schedule. She approached the podium. A new gate agent, a young man named Paul, looked up. "Good afternoon," he said, his smile genuine. "Dr. Thornton, right?" Lillian paused. "Yes. How did you know?" Paul tapped his screen. "We have a new system. It flags our executive-level employees, but it also... well, it flags you. The Thornton Initiative, lady." He blushed. "Sorry, we all know the story. You're kind of a legend around here." "I'm just a passenger, Paul," Lillian said, smiling slightly. "Trying to get to London." "Well," Paul said, scanning her pass. Beep. Green light. "The system is working perfectly. Payment confirmed. You're all set. By the way, Mum, I just wanted to say, as a TAA employee, "Thank you." "For what?" "For making us better," he said simply. "It wasn't easy, that new training. But it's different now. We know what to do. We know how to handle things. And we know management has our back if we do the right thing." Lillian nodded, the tightness in her chest that she always felt when she was in this specific terminal finally, after a year, beginning to ease. She walked onto the jet bridge, the very spot where she had been slammed against the wall. It was just a place now, a hallway. Its power over her was gone. She took her seat in 1A. Susan, the senior purser from that fateful flight, was working this one as well. "Dr. Thornton," Susan beamed. "Welcome aboard. Can I get you your usual? Water? No ice? That would be lovely, Susan. Thank you." As the plane pushed back, Lillian looked out the window at the hive of activity on the tarmac. She saw baggage handlers, fuel truck drivers, and wing walkers, all wearing the TAA uniform. They weren't just employees anymore. They were part of her initiative. They were, in a small way, her team. The company was safe. The bad actors were gone. And she, Dr. Lillian Thornton, was exactly where she was supposed to be. In the end, it wasn't a courtroom that defined Frank Miller's or Brenda Jensen's fate. It was a single airport terminal. Brenda, blacklisted from the airline industry, found herself in a minimum wage job, a stark contrast to the power she once wielded. Officer Miller, stripped of his badge, pension, and pride, faced the humiliation of his public apology and a future he never saw coming. His authority was a hollow shell. And Dr. Lillian Thornton? She didn't just win her case. She reshaped the entire airline. Her Thornton Initiative became the gold standard for corporate accountability, proving that true power isn't in a badge or a uniform, but in integrity, intelligence, and the courage to stand firm. The video of the incident served as a permanent reminder. A person's worth is never defined by a biased glance. Karma, in this case, wasn't just swift, it was total. What did you think of Lillian's response? Was the karma severe enough for Brenda and Officer Miller? Let us know in the comments below. We read every single one. If you love stories about justice and hard karma, make sure to like this video, share it with someone who needs to see it, and subscribe to our channel. Click that bell icon so you never miss another story.